Hey, hi, and hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Let's take a moment here to talk about one of the strangest occurrences in the world of classic rock this past week. That would be this new version of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, redone entirely top to bottom by band member Roger Waters, who is just kind of doing his own version here, which he labels as a redux, has said that the album isn't necessarily meant to be like a replacement for the album or anything like that. Though at this point, the record is so old, even if that was his intention, how could he possibly even achieve that feat? Above all else, I would just want this revised edition of the record to be good. Seemingly, it was not going to shape up that way, given our first taste of the LP. Roger Waters saw fit to release his own version of the song Money, which personally is one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs of all time, one of the best rock bass lines of all time. That 7/8 time is just sick. And to say Roger pretty much made the song tedious and unlistenable would be an understatement, as much of the track is just taken up with these gravelly, weary spoken word passages where Roger poetically tries to portray in his own way a vision of, future dystopian dog-eat-dog capitalism, which, given the original sentiment of the song and a lot of Roger's political views, makes sense for him to inject that into the track. I guess it also kind of makes sense that, the song wouldn't go on the same sort of instrumental excursion it did in the original, because Richard Wright and David Gilmour are obviously bringing a lot of instrumental muscle to the table on any given Pink Floyd record, which is another reason I have kind of reservations with this new version. And maybe I'll detour into that now by quickly saying, even though Waters at this point in the band was taking a pretty primary role when it came to songwriting, I feel like putting the album out in this way sort of diminishes, or in a way erases, the fact that the record was very much a collaborative effort. Even if the record did come out great, fantastic, amazing, to release a version that is completely without Gilmour's and Wright's input, or at least, with just kind of revised versions of their input, just kind of seems a little suspect, regardless of each person's endorsement or lack thereof of this project. But yeah, this new version of Money that Roger put out in the lead up to this record was really, truly not it.
The devil enjoys his little joke.
It had me worried about how the rest of this record would shape up. I gotta be honest, I braced for the absolute worst, that he would pretty much ruin every song on this album, and I wouldn't say that was entirely the case. And if I squint my eyes at this thing, I can kind of see what Roger was going for. There are a number of tracks on here, namely Breathe, Time, as well as Us and Them, where I would say lyrically and instrumentally, Waters is pretty true to the original composition of the song on the album, and he's presenting us with a version of the track that is just more somber, more atmospheric, more woeful, a little slower, a little gentler, which sonically and instrumentally I think is his attempt at trying to make this album more of a reflection of age, twilight years, death, time passing, and it's very much effective in that sense. If you were somehow unsure as to whether or not that's what Waters was going for, take a look at the track Great Gig in the Sky, which in this new version, I do very much miss that big over-the-top vocal performance that I think kind of like makes the original song. But through the spoken word passages on the song, Roger very much makes this track about a friend of his who passed away recently, which honestly is not too crazy of an addition or revision, given how much of this LP reflects on Syd Barrett and going through the struggles and personal problems that took him out of Pink Floyd. So again, given time passed, given the original inspiration for this record, and given the stage of life that Roger is currently in, I think reframing the record in this way, it makes sense. One of my biggest fears going into this project was Waters was going to purely use this record to indulgently self-reflect and just kind of make the whole thing about him in like a very nasty and kind of egotistical sense. And I in fact think that is not what happened here, and that he did a pretty great job generally of making this material make sense in this current era of his life and in 2023. So in a sense, it does function as a retrospective, but I still can't really ignore the fact that a great deal of the material on this LP, because of Roger's changes, have just become very tedious to listen to. Be that, again, Money, or be that, the originally instrumental cuts that are now just covered with all of these spoken word passages that obviously I get add to the overall concept and, themes of the record, but still feel like a pretentious bore to some degree, like a less compelling Leonard Cohen or something like that. I think the record unfortunately kind of goes out with an uneventful whimper too. So while listening to the entirety of this new version has definitely given me more insight into Roger's ultimate vision here, it's still kind of a slog and kind of a bore to listen to, as I feel like he could have done so much more with the record instrumentally. And while he has clearly put a lot of effort into much of the poetry going into this new version, there is a point at which it kind of feels like it's not really adding to the project, and he's more or less just kind of beating a dead horse, or just kind of being a bit too on the nose. Or again, especially during some of those spoken word passages of Money, like he's just trying to act his way through the track and turning the whole thing into a damn theater production. Or like one of those William Shatner records where he's doing spoken word over popular instrumentals. So yeah, I mean, while I thought he was going to utterly ruin this record end to end, he didn't totally do that. He just sort of did that on some parts of it. And I guess I can leave this video saying those are my thoughts. What are yours? Leave them in the comments. Let me know. Mwah. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Roger Waters, The Dark Side of the Moon Redux, forever.